The notification pinged on my phone at 2 a.m. A sharp sound that sliced through the silence of my Brooklyn apartment. I was 28, sprawled on my couch, half drunk on cheap wine, scrolling through a gay dating app out of boredom and a nagging ache for connection. Then I saw it. Mark, the bearer profile that stopped my heart. Mark, my dad's best friend. The guy who'd been at every family barbecue. Who'd taught me how to throw a punch when I was 16. Who'd always been there, steady as a rock. Now, his rugged face stared back at me from my screen. His profile listing him as 38. Single. And interested in men. My thumb hovered over the message button. My pulse racing. What the hell was I supposed to do with this? I'd known Mark Sullivan my whole life. He was the kind of man who filled a room broad shoulders, a deep laugh, and eyes that always seemed to see right through you. Growing up in Queens, I'd idolized him. He was my dad's old college buddy, the one who'd show up with a six-pack and stories about their wild days. But I'd never known this side of him, never even suspected. And now, here he was, on an app, looking for something I'd been too afraid to admit I wanted to. I typed a message before I could overthink it. Hey, Mark. It's Ethan. Didn't expect to see you here. My finger hesitated, then hit send. The wait was agonizing. 3 dots appeared, then vanished. My stomach churned. Had I just ruined everything? When his reply came, it was simple. Ethan. Holy shit. Can we talk? No emojis. No pretense, just Mark. Raw and real. I agreed to meet him the next day at a cafe in Williamsburg. A neutral spot where we could figure out what this meant. I barely slept that night, my mind spinning with questions. Was Mark really gay? Bi? Had he been hiding this forever? And why did my heart pound at the thought of seeing him? The cafe was warm, smelling of fresh coffee and cinnamon. Mark was already there when I walked in, sitting by the window, his leather jacket slung over the chair. He looked older than his profile pic, lines etched deeper around his eyes. A faint stubble graying at his jaw, but still impossibly handsome. He stood when he saw me, his smile tight, nervous. Ethan, he said, voice low. You look grown up. I laughed. Awkward. Yeah. Well, 28 does that to you. We sat, and for a moment, neither of us spoke. The weight of the app, the messages, hung between us like a third person at the table. Finally, he broke the silence. I didn't know you were. He trailed off, gesturing vaguely. Gay? I supplied, my voice steadier than I felt. Yeah. Came out to Dad last year. He's still adjusting. Mark nodded, his eyes distant. He doesn't know about me. Nobody does. The admission hit me hard. Mark, the guy who'd always seemed so sure of himself, was carrying a secret this big. I wanted to ask why. How long? But the pain in his eyes stopped me. Instead, I reached out, my hand brushing his on the table. It was a small gesture, but it felt like crossing a line we couldn't uncross. I'm not here to judge you, I said softly. I don't know what this means. He looked at my hand, then at me. Neither do I, kid. But I'm glad you messaged. That night, I lay awake, replaying our conversation. Mark had opened up, just a little, about his past, how he'd buried his feelings for years, how he'd tried to be the man everyone expected. He hadn't dated men before, not openly, but the app was his first step toward living authentically. I felt a strange mix of admiration and fear. Admiration for his courage. Fear because I was starting to feel something for him, something dangerous, complicated, and undeniably real. Over the next week, we texted. Casual at first, then deeper. He'd send me photos of his morning coffee, I'd reply with dumb memes. It felt like we were building something, but neither of us named it. I couldn't shake the guilt. Though, what would Dad think? Mark was his best friend. Practically family. This wasn't just a crush, it was a betrayal waiting to happen. But I couldn't stop. Mark was different from the guys I'd dated, shallow hookups who ghosted after a week. He listened. He cared. When he asked me to dinner at his place, I said yes without hesitation. His apartment in Manhattan was small but warm, filled with books and vinyl records. He cooked pasta, poured wine, and we talked for hours about my job as a graphic designer, his work as a contractor, our shared love of old jazz. The air crackled with tension, but we didn't act on it. Not yet. As I left, he hugged me, his arms strong and steady. "I'm scared, Ethan," he whispered, "but I don't want to stop this." I nodded, my throat tight. Me neither. Driving home, I felt the weight of what we were starting. This wasn't just about use, it was about family, loyalty, and the secrets we'd both been keeping. I didn't know where it would lead, but for the first time in years, I felt alive. The days after that dinner blurred into a haze of anticipation. Mark and I texted constantly, our conversations weaving between playful banter and raw honesty. He told me about his first crucial guy in college he'd never dared approach. I shared my own struggles, like the time I came out to my mom and she cried. Not out of rejection, but because she wished I'd told her sooner. Each message felt like a brick in the foundation of something neither of us was ready to define. But the guilt gnawed at me. Dad had no idea. Every time I saw him at Sunday dinners in Queens, his laughter booming over a plate of ribs, I felt like a traitor. Mark was his oldest friend, the guy he'd trusted for decades. If he found out, would he hate us both? I pushed the thought down, but it lingered like a shadow. A week later, Mark invited me to a jazz club in Harlem. Just as friends, he said, but the way his voice softened on the phone told me otherwise. I arrived early, my nerves buzzing. The club was dim, filled with the hum of saxophones and the clink of glasses. Mark walked in wearing a dark button-up, his eyes locking onto mine across the room. My breath caught. He wasn't just handsome, he was magnetic. We sat close, our knees brushing under the table. The music wrapped around us, sultry and intimate. Halfway through the set, he leaned in, his voice low. "I haven't felt this alive in years. Ethan." I swallowed hard. Me too. His hand found mine under the table, his fingers warm and calloused. It was the first time we'd touched like that, deliberate, undeniable. My heart pounded, but I didn't pull away. For the rest of the night, we listened to the music, our hands intertwined, the world fading to just us. But reality crashed back the next morning. Dad called, asking me to help him move some furniture at his place. Mark was there when I arrived, laughing with Dad in the garage like nothing had changed. I froze, my stomach twisting. Mark's eyes met mine, and for a split second, I saw the same panic I felt. We were playing with fire. "Ethan, you okay?" Dad asked, wiping sweat from his brow. "Yeah," I lied, forcing a smile. "Just tired." Mark stayed quiet, but I could feel his gaze on me all afternoon. When Dad stepped out to grab beers, Mark pulled me aside. "We need to be careful," he whispered. It's complicated." "I know," I said, my voice barely audible. "But I don't want to stop." He nodded, his jaw tight. "Neither do I." That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept imagining Dad's face if he found out. Shock, betrayal, maybe disgust. I'd always been close to him, the only son who'd followed in his love for art and music. But this could break us. The next day, Mark texted me a single line. Can you come over tonight? I didn't hesitate. His apartment felt like a sanctuary. A place where we could be ourselves without the weight of the world. We kissed for the first time that night. Tentative at first, then desperate. His hands cupped my face, and I felt like I was falling into him. Into this dangerous, beautiful thing we were creating. But the high didn't last. The next morning, I woke to a voicemail from Dad. Hey, kid. You and Mark seemed off yesterday. Everything okay? His tone was casual, but it sent a chill down my spine. Did he suspect something? I didn't respond, my hands shaking as I deleted the message. Mark and I met again, this time in Central Park. We walked, our shoulders brushing, but the ease of our earlier moments was gone. We can't keep sneaking around, I said, my voice breaking. It's killing me. I know, he said, his eyes fixed on the ground. But if we tell him, it could ruin everything. My friendship with your dad, it's all I've had for years. I wanted to argue, to say we were worth the risk, but the words stuck in my throat. Instead, I took his hand, squeezing it tight. We'll figure it out, I said, though I wasn't sure I believed it. The park was alive with people, families, couples, friends, but I felt like we were in our own bubble, caught between love and loyalty. As we sat on a bench, watching the sun dip below the skyline, I realized I was falling for Mark. Not just a crush, not just attraction, something deeper, something that scared me as much as it thrilled me. The weeks that followed were a tightrope walk. Mark and I stole moments whenever we cootled late-night coffees, quiet walks, stolen kisses in his apartment. Each touch felt like a rebellion against the world we were hiding from. But the secrecy was suffocating. Every time my phone buzzed, I half expected it to be Dad, calling me out. One evening, Mark invited me to a gallery opening in Chelsea. I'd mentioned my love for abstract art, and he'd remembered, booking us tickets to a show featuring local artists. He looked sharp in a blazer, his usual ruggedness softened by the dim gallery lights. We wandered through the exhibits, our shoulders brushing, whispering about the paintings like we were the only ones there. This one reminds me of you, he said, stopping at a canvas splashed with vibrant blues and reds. Bold, but complicated. I laughed, nudging him. You calling me complicated? He grinned, his eyes warm. Maybe a little. For a moment, I forgot about Dad, about the lies we were weaving. But then I saw her, Lisa, my dad's coworker, across the room. She knew us both. My heart sank as she waved, heading our way. Ethan. Mark. She called, her smile bright. What are you two doing here? Just catching up, Mark said smoothly, but I saw the tension in his jaw. Lisa didn't seem to notice. She chatted about the art, oblivious to the panic clawing at my chest. When she left, I turned to Mark, my voice low. That was too close. He nodded, his face grim. We can't keep doing this. But we did. The pull between us was too strong. A week later, we went on our first real date, a quiet dinner at a hole-in-the-wall Italian place in the village. We laughed, shared stories, and for once, it felt normal, like we were just two guys falling for each other. But as we left, I saw a familiar car parked across the street. Dad's car. I froze, grabbing Mark's arm. Is that? Mark's eyes widened. Shit. Let's go. We ducked into an alley, hearts pounding, waiting until the car pulled away. It might not have been Dad, maybe, just a similar car, but the fear was real. We were living on borrowed time. Back at his place, Mark poured us whiskey, his hands shaking. Ethan, we need to talk about what happens if he finds out. I took a sip, the burn grounding me. He'd lose it. You know how he is traditional. Stubborn. He barely handled me coming out. Mark stared at his glass. I've known him 20 years. He's my family. But you. He looked up. His eyes raw. You're something I never expected. I crossed the room, sitting beside him. Then we fight for this. Together. He kissed me, slow and deep. And for the first time, I felt like we could face anything. But the next day, reality hit hard. Dad invited us both to a family barbecue. No way out. The backyard was packed, cousins, aunts, neighbors. Dad was at the grill, Mark helping him flip burgers. The two of them laughing like old times. I watched from a distance, my chest tight. Every time Mark glanced at me, I felt the secret burning between us. Then Dad pulled me aside. You and Mark have been weird lately, he said, his brow furrowed. What's going on? My mouth went dry. Nothing, Dad. Just busy. He didn't buy it. I could see it in his eyes. That night, I texted Mark, we need to tell him. Soon. His reply came hours later. I'm not ready. I didn't push. But the weight of our secret was crushing me. I started pulling away, skipping our usual meetups, answering his texts with one-word replies. I loved him, I knew that now, but I couldn't keep lying. A week later, Mark showed up at my apartment, unannounced. You're shutting me out, he said, his voice rough. Talk to me. I let him in, my heart aching. I can't do this halfway. Mark. It's all or nothing. He stepped closer, his hands framing my face. Then it's all. I'm in. Ethan. I love you. The words hit me like a tidal wave. I kissed him, tears stinging my eyes. We were in deep now. No turning back. But as we held each other, I knew the hardest part was still ahead. Mark's confession changed everything. I love you hung in the air. A promise and a challenge. We spent that night tangled in each other, whispering dreams of a future we weren't sure we could have. But the high of his words faded fast when I thought of Dad. We couldn't keep this from him forever. The next morning, over coffee in my cramped kitchen, we made a plan. We'd tell Dad together. At his house. After the weekend. No more hiding. But the thought of his reaction, his anger, his disappointment made my stomach churn. Mark was just as scared. I could tell. He kept rubbing his hands together. A nervous tick I'd never noticed before. We'll do this right, he said, his voice firm despite the worry in his eyes. He deserves the truth. I nodded. But doubt not at me. Dad was old school, raised on tough love and rigid expectations. He'd accepted my coming out, but only after months of tense silences. Mark was his brother in all but blood. This could shatter that bond. The weekend dragged. I threw myself into work, sketching designs until my hands cramped, trying to drown out the anxiety. Mark texted me constantly, little reassurances. Photos of his dog. A playlist of jazz songs he thought I'd like. It helped, but not enough. Sunday came, and we drove to Queens together. The air in Mark's truck was thick with tension. He gripped the wheel too tight, his knuckles white. I wanted to reach for him, but even that felt risky, like Dad might somehow sense it. At the house, Dad was in his element grilling steaks, cracking jokes with neighbors. He hugged us both, oblivious to the storm brewing. We waited until the crowd thinned, until it was just the three of us in the living room, the TV humming in the background. Dad, I started, my voice shaky. We need to talk. He frowned, setting down his beer. What's up, kid? Mark took a deep breath. It's about us. Me and Ethan. Dad's eyes narrowed, flicking between us. What do you mean? You and Ethan? My heart pounded. I opened my mouth. But Mark spoke first. We're together. Tom. We didn't plan it. But it happened. We love each other. The silence was deafening. Dad's face went blank. Then red. You're what? His voice was low. Dangerous. Dad. Please, I started. But he cut me off. You're my best friend. Mark. He roared. Standing. And you're, what? Sleeping with my son. It's not like that. Mark said. His voice steady but pained. This is real. Tom. I'd never hurt him. Dad laughed. A bitter sound. Hurt him. You're 38. Mark. He's a kid. I'm not a kid. I snapped. Standing too. I'm 28. Dad. I know what I want. He turned on me. His eyes blazing. You think this is okay? Sneaking around behind my back. Both of you. The fight escalated fast. Dad's voice shook the room. Accusations flying, betrayal. Lies. Shame. Mark tried to explain. But Dad wasn't hearing it. I felt like I was drowning. Watching the two men I loved most tear each other apart. Finally, Dad pointed at the door. Get out. Both of you. We left. The slam of the door echoing in my ears. In the truck, Mark's hands trembled as he started the engine. I'm sorry. Ethan. He whispered. I didn't think it'd go this bad. I reached for his hand, squeezing it. We'll get through this. But I wasn't sure. That night, alone in my apartment, I cried for the first time in years. I'd lost my dad, not physically, but in every way that mattered. Mark called, but I couldn't answer. The weight of what we'd done was too much. The next day, I found a letter slipped under my door. Dad's handwriting. I need time. Ethan, I don't understand this, but I'm trying. Don't give up on me. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was something. I clutched the letter, hope flickering in my chest. Maybe, just maybe, we could find a way forward. Dad's letter was a lifeline, but it didn't erase the pain. Mark and I leaned on each other, our relationship a fragile anchor in the storm. We spent evenings talking, trying to make sense of what we'd lost and what we still had. But every laugh, every kiss, was tinged with the shadow of Dad's anger. I threw myself into work, taking on extra projects to keep my mind busy. Mark did the same, burying himself in construction jobs across the city. But we made time for each other, quiet dinners, long walks, moments where we could pretend the world wasn't against us. One night, curled up on his couch, he traced circles on my palm and said, I'd do it all again. You know, even with all this. I kissed him, my heart full. Me too. But the real world wouldn't stay quiet. Rumors started spreading. Lisa, the co-worker from the gallery, had seen us, and word got back to Dad's circle. Friends started asking questions, their voices laced with judgment. Mark took it harder than I did. He'd spent years building a life that fit everyone else's expectations, and now it was unraveling. One afternoon, he called me, his voice tight. Your dad wants to meet. Just me. My stomach dropped. What does he want? I don't know, Mark admitted. But I owe him this. I wanted to go with him, to face Dad together. But Mark insisted on going alone. He needs to see me as his friend, not us, he said. I hated it, but I agreed. That night, I paced my apartment, checking my phone every 5 minutes. When Mark finally called, his voice was heavy. He's hurt. Ethan. Really hurt. But he listened. What did he say? I asked, my heart in my throat. He doesn't get it. But he's trying. He asked about you, how you're doing. I think he misses you. I closed my eyes. Relief and guilt crashing together. Did he say anything about us? Mark hesitated. He said he needs time. But he didn't tell me to stay away from you. It wasn't much, but it was enough to keep going. Over the next week, Mark and I grew closer, our bond deepening through the chaos. We started talking about the future, moving in together, building a life. It felt like a dream, but one we could actually reach. Then Dad called me. His voice was gruff, hesitant. Can we talk? Just you and me. We met at a diner in Queens, the same one we'd gone to when I was a kid. He looked tired, older than I'd ever seen him. I don't understand this. Ethan, he said, staring at his coffee. Mark's my best friend. You're my son. It feels wrong. I know, I said softly. But I love him, Dad. And he loves me. He winced, but didn't argue. I just want you to be happy. Both of you. But I need time to wrap my head around this. I nodded, tears prickling my eyes. I can give you that. We didn't hug, didn't say much more, but it was a start. Driving home, I felt lighter, like maybe we could rebuild something. When I told Mark, he pulled me into his arms, his relief mirroring mine. We're gonna be okay, he whispered. But life wasn't done testing us. A week later, Mark got a call from an old friend, someone who'd heard the rumors. He was cruel, throwing slurs and accusations. Mark hung up, his face pale. This is what I was afraid of, he said. Losing everyone. You haven't lost me, I said fiercely. And you won't. He looked at me, his eyes searching. You're worth it, Ethan. I just hope I'm worth it for you. I kissed him, pouring everything into it: love, defiance, hope. We were fighting for something bigger than ourselves now, and I wasn't giving up. The weeks after Dad's diner talk were a slow climb. He didn't call often, but when he did, his tone was softer, like he was testing the waters. Mark and I clung to that hope, building our relationship brick by brick. We started spending more time together openly: walks in the park, dinners at restaurants. No longer hiding. It felt like freedom, but the fear of judgment lingered. One night, we went to a gay bar in the village, a place I'd been to a few times, but Mark never had. He was nervous, his eyes scanning the room like he expected someone to call him out. But as the night went on, he relaxed, laughing as we danced to a cheesy pop song. Watching him let go, even just a little, made my heart swell. You're getting good at this, I teased, spinning him. He grinned, pulling me close. Only 'cause you're here. But the outside world wasn't as kind. Mark's contractor buddies started distancing themselves, their texts going unanswered, their invites drying up. He didn't say much, but I saw the hurt in his eyes. I tried to be his rock, but I was struggling too. My co-workers had started whispering, and I overheard one call our relationship weird. It stung more than I expected. One evening, Mark came over, his face drawn. I got a letter from my landlord today, he said. Someone complained about unacceptable behavior. They didn't say it outright, but I know it's about us. I felt sick. Can they do that? They can try, he said, his jaw tight. But I'm not moving. I admired his defiance, but the pressure was wearing us down. We started talking about leaving New York, starting fresh somewhere new. It was a fantasy, but it kept us going. We'd lie in bed, dreaming of a little house by the coast, just the two of us and his dog. Then Dad invited us to dinner, not at his Hosita restaurant, neutral ground. I was nervous, but Mark was optimistic. He's coming around, he said, squeezing my hand. I know him. The restaurant was quiet. A family-owned place in Brooklyn. Dad was already there, sipping a beer. He stood when we walked in, his expression unreadable. Good to see you both, he said, and I could tell he meant it, even if it was hard for him. Dinner was awkward at first, small talk filling the silence. But then Dad looked at Mark, his voice low. You've been my brother for 20 years. I don't want to lose that. Mark's eyes glistened. You won't, Tom. I swear. And you, Dad said, turning to me. You're my kid. I want you to be happy. I am, I said, my voice breaking. Happier than I've ever been. He nodded, his jaw tight. Okay. I'm trying. All right. It wasn't a full acceptance, but it was enough. We left the restaurant feeling lighter, like a weight had lifted. In the car, Mark reached for my hand. We're gonna make it, he said. But the next day, trouble found us again. Mark's boss called him into the office, saying clients were uncomfortable with his lifestyle. It wasn't a firing, but it was a warning. Mark came to my place that night, defeated. I've worked for that company 15 years, he said. And now this. I held him, my heart aching. We'll fight this. Together. He nodded, but I could see the doubt in his eyes. For the first time, I wondered if love would be enough to get us through. But as I looked at him, curled against me, I knew I'd do whatever it took to keep us together. The threat from Mark's boss lit a fire in us. We weren't just fighting for our relationship, now we were fighting for our right to exist. I started researching legal options, talking to friends who knew about workplace discrimination. Mark was hesitant at first, not wanting to make waves. But I pushed him. You've given them 15 years. I said. They don't get to push you out because of who you love. He nodded, his resolve hardening. Okay. Let's do this. We found a lawyer, a sharp woman named Rachel who specialized in LGBTQ+ cases. She warned us it wouldn't be easy, but she believed we had a case. Mark filed a formal complaint, and the waiting game began. The stress was relentless, but it brought us closer. We spent nights strategizing, laughing, making love, holding on to each other like a lifeline. Dad started calling more, checking in. One day, he showed up at my apartment with a six-pack and an apology. I was wrong to react the way I did, he said, his voice rough. You're my son, and Mark's my friend. I'm learning. I hugged him, tears streaming down my face. Thanks, Dad. He didn't say he fully accepted us, but he was trying, and that was enough. He even invited us to his annual 4th of July barbecue. A big step. We went, nervous but hopeful. The backyard was packed, and I braced for judgment. But most people were kind. A few cousins asked questions, curious but not cruel. Dad stayed by our side, a silent show of support. Mark's work situation didn't improve, though. His boss started scheduling him for the worst shifts. A clear retaliation. Rachel documented everything, building our case. One night, Mark broke down, his head in his hands. I don't know if I can keep doing this, he said. I knelt in front of him, taking his hands. You're not alone. We're in this together. He looked at me, his eyes red. I don't deserve you, Ethan. Yes, you do, I said fiercely. And I'm not going anywhere. The next week, we got a break. Rachel called with news. One of Mark's coworkers had come forward, confirming the boss's bias. It wasn't a win yet, but it was hope. We celebrated with a quiet dinner at home. Just the two of us. dreaming of a future where we didn't have to fight so hard. But life had one more curveball. Dad's health took a turn, a mild heart attack. Out of nowhere, I rushed to the hospital. Mark by my side. Seeing Dad in that bed, pale and fragile, broke something in me. Mark held my hand, his presence steadying me. "He's gonna be okay," Mark said, his voice calm. "He's tough." Dad woke up the next day, groggy but alive. When he saw us together, he didn't flinch. "You two take care of each other," he said weakly. "That's what matters." It was the closest he'd come to blessing us. I squeezed Mark's hand, my heart full. We were still fighting, but we had each other. And now, maybe, Dad's support. For the first time, I believed we could win. Dad's recovery was slow, but it gave us time to rebuild. He started inviting us over, asking about our lives, even joking with Mark like old times. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. Mark and I leaned into it, grateful for every step forward. The legal battle with Mark's job dragged on, but Rachel was relentless. By fall, we had enough evidence to force a settlement. Mark's boss was demoted, and Mark got a raise and an apology. It wasn't justice. Not fully, but it was a victory. We celebrated with a trip to the coast, renting a small cabin in Maine. For a weekend, it was just us, no secrets, no judgment. We walked along the beach, hand in hand, the waves crashing at our feet. "I want this forever," Mark said, his voice soft against the wind. I kissed him, the salt air mixing with his warmth. "Then let's make it happen." Back in New York, we started planning. We found an apartment in Brooklyn, big enough for us and Mark's dog. Moving in together felt like a promise-a commitment to the life we'd fought for. Dad helped us move, carrying boxes and grumbling about his back. But his smile said everything. He was with us. Truly. One night, as we unpacked, Mark pulled out a small box. Inside was a ring, simple and silver. "I'm not proposing," he said, grinning. "Not yet. But I want you to know I'm all in." I slipped the ring on, my heart racing. I'm all in too. A year later, Dad threw a party for his 60th birthday. He insisted we come as a couple, introducing us to everyone without hesitation. When he raised a glass to us, calling Mark family, I nearly cried. The room cheered, and Mark squeezed my hand, his eyes shining. We'd lost friends, faced judgment, and fought battles we never expected. But we'd gained something greater, a love that had weathered the storm, a family that had grown stronger, and a future we could build together. As I looked at Mark, laughing with Dad, I knew we'd changed each other's lives. And that was worth everything.